So in a sales cycle, it is often at the end of the cycle that the salesperson or his manager realizes that the deal which was being forecasted was never a deal, or that they had no chance of winning it. So it's both a waste of time as well as money, which could have been used to chase other deals. So what is it that helps a person decide whether a deal is worth working on or not? How does one take hard calls on dropping deals versus continuing to chase them? How does a manager gauge whether a person who is forecasting a deal is that deal genuine or not? So get answers to these questions and more on a freewheeling chat with Geet Lulla, the MD of Grace Note India, Middle East and Southeast Asia, who's also a veteran sales leader in the IT industry. So welcome to all. So hi Geet, good afternoon, and thanks for coming on this discussion. I think I reached out to you after I saw some of the very enlightening posts that you wrote on LinkedIn about deal qualification and that interesting term you used, deal disqualification.
Yep.
So I felt it'll be good if we can just get the essence of what you have learned over all these years. You've been a veteran in the IT industry, so it'll be lovely to hear from you your views on qualifying deals and what works, what doesn't work. So welcome.
Thanks, Sid, for reaching out. I'm happy to share. And thanks for saying I've been with the IT industry for so long. Makes me feel very old. So thank you for that. uh, the fact that we are talking about it and you want to talk to me about it tells us that this is a very important subject, especially in B2B sales that people like you and me have been doing for decades now.
Yeah.
And it's very important for sure. I think that one of the posts that I put out last week was about improving the hit rate, as I called it, of in a company I work, from 1 out of 5 deals that we were chasing to 4 out of 5 deals. So that's like a 4x improvement in terms of the number of deals that we were chasing. So it's not about the revenue. Probably would have grown in any case. It's just that the quality of engagement that you achieve with deal qualification is much better, which automatically leads to bigger deals, better deals, and happier clients. At the end of the day, I think there are 3 things that are very important to any salesperson and the organization the salesperson works for: revenue, satisfied or even happy clients, and satisfied or even happy employees.
Lovely. So Geet, I have one question to kick off things. Okay, just to get a feel.
Sure.
We see there are different aspects of running a sales cycle. There is prospecting, there is qualifying, there is the solution selling aspect, handling objections, closing the deal, and so on and so forth. So in your opinion, how does the qualifying piece, what's the importance of a deal being qualified versus other parts of the sales cycle? Maybe we can start with your thoughts on that.
All parts of the sales cycle are important. All have a lot of science and a lot of art behind them, for sure. The reason I feel qualification is so crucial, because you mentioned something called consultative selling, right?
Yes.
Right. It's impossible to do consultative selling if you're going after everything that moves out there, right? And that's where the quality of engagement becomes important. If you qualify your deals early, you're able to engage more consultatively, in a more mature fashion with your qualified opportunities, rather than going in a very shallow way after a lot of opportunities, where automatically the quality of engagement reduces and the ability to sell consultatively becomes almost impossible. Right?
So the solution selling aspect, I mean, most organizations that I have seen, a lot of organizations, I'm not saying most, but a lot of organizations, I've worked with a lot of large companies and startups as well. So there's a lot of emphasis that the organization places on the solution selling aspect, the prospecting aspect, and the negotiation and closure aspect, because they see that this is where the maximum value is being added, and a lot of effort, training effort, and coaching effort goes into that. But qualification is something that people
is neglected.
Neglected, or it's just like a quick tick mark. So what can we do as to add importance to that part of the cycle? What's your view on that?
I think first of all, there are certain mindsets that we have to overcome. We've all been taught in B2B sales that you need to have a pipeline that's 3x, 4x, 5x of your target, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
And that is a very simple thing that almost everyone can understand. Yeah, if I need to hit a target of 100, my pipeline needs to be 300, 400, or 500. I don't agree with that. I have never agreed with that, and I have practiced my disagreement with that in my sales career. If I look back and quantitatively assess what has been my pipeline of my target, I would struggle to exceed 1.5 or 1.7.
Okay, that's interesting.
And yet, I've had I would say a reasonably successful sales career and sales leadership career, and it all boils down to qualification.
Okay.
Right, because the ability to hit 100 when you have a pipeline of 150 obviously means that I have that much more confidence on me and my team's ability to close 100 out of that 150. So in my opinion, I think we need to perhaps switch perspectives, get rid of the simplistic measures of 3x, 4x, 5x pipeline of the target, and look at doing qualification better. I think it just makes more sense for everybody involved in the sales cycle.
I absolutely agree with you. In fact, I have seen that, what you started by talking about this win rate, right? So win rate is something that companies use to then arrive at how much pipeline is needed. So if my experience has been that out of the 5 deals that I engage in, I won only 1 deal, or out of the 7 deals that I engage in, I won only 1 deal, then what I start doing is I start flogging my lead generation team. I start flogging my sales team to work on at least 7 deals. Boss, if you close 1 deal, you need to work on 7 deals.
And Sid, very quickly that becomes an exercise in futility, and it becomes a Microsoft Excel exercise, because you're flogging the sales guys to create new pipeline, and then you suddenly find your Excel sheet or your CRM, whatever you use, is full of junk.
True. Yeah, go ahead.
So, and I've obviously tried to stay away from that kind of an approach. But I think it's also important to be able to prove this method works. And I would always give credit to people whom I have worked for, and they have been able to see merit and see value over a period of time in this approach, and say that, hey, what Geet's doing is fine. So I'm okay with a 1.5x or a 1.7x pipeline for achieving a one target.
So Geet, this is pretty revolutionary in the sense that I've never heard any leader talking about being comfortable with the 1.5x pipeline, because it's a really well qualified pipeline. So what is the method that you would like to talk about? A lot of people talk about a lot of methods. You mentioned a couple on that post. You spoke about BANT. You spoke about something called CHAMP. You spoke something about ANAM. I've never heard this ANAM thing. So in your opinion, what are those criteria that helps a sales guy to know whether a deal exists, whether it's worth working on or it's not? What are those criteria?
So like I said in my post, there are multiple models that exist. All of them are good. Perhaps some are better than the others, but I don't use any of these models. I use a model which I have hinted at in my post. I called it the 4 Ws. And I have to give credit to one of my old bosses who I consider as a mentor, who introduced me to this concept, and that's what I use. And I'm planning to post on that, but I can talk a little bit about it in this session also, if you want.
That'll be nice. Yeah.
Right. So the 4 Ws is pretty simple, as are most of these models actually. The first W is question 1: why is the customer, why is the client buying? What's the need? Right. Question number 2: why is the client buying now? So that's timing or the urgency related to the purchase decision. The third W is, why is the client looking to buy from me? Why is the client looking at my solution, right? As opposed to the other solutions from my competitor that are available in the market. Questions 1, 2, 3. Why now? Why me?
Yeah.
But there's also a question 0, which I kind of add right at the beginning, which is, who is buying? Whom am I talking to? If you look at my post on sales disqualification, which I posted a couple of days ago, I talked about me knowing the CEO of that bank, whereas my sales guy was talking at 1 or 2 rungs lower.
Correct.
So he was obviously talking to the wrong person, or the person who was not sharing the right information. right?
Hmm.
And my fortunately in that scenario, after 4 months of his effort, I had the ability to and have a discussion with the CEO and eliminate or disqualify that opportunity. So who you're talking to is absolutely critical, but that is question zero. But there's
Hmm.
also question one, two, three, which are I would say equally important.
Brilliant. So, in terms of these four questions, I also, I think I had also in SAP used something similar when we used to qualify deals, we used to look at these three questions, but the who never came in. So I was also curious to know what the fourth W is. So this who is something that is so important, because salespeople tend to go and talk to someone whom they are comfortable with,
Exactly.
right? And they don't really go to the person who matters. And finally, when the discussion happens with the sales, with the customer executive who matters, and that person, like you have mentioned in that post, he puts the chills into your stomach, right? He says, "Sir, no such deal. Who told you?" So,
Yeah, absolutely.
so
Look,
what
so,
what what could you do to double click on this? I mean, salespeople do tend to ask a few questions, and then they jump, right? They ask one question and then they jump, and if the question is basically the question they tend to ask is, "Tell me about what problems you're facing," right? Challenges, problems, issues, call it what you may. And the customer starts with some issues, and then the guy immediately, light bulbs start flashing. Hey, there's a deal here, there's a deal here, and he immediately then starts pitching his solution. He doesn't bother with the other three W's, right? So, uh, what do you think they need to do? How do they go about asking these questions? What's the right way to do it?
uh, I think to an extent it also depends on the nature of the product or service or the
Yes,
offering that you are
yes,
having a discussion about. If it
yes.
is something that is fairly commoditized, if there is a well identified client need,
Mhm.
perhaps there is an RFP or a tender out for that thing, then it's pretty straightforward that there is a need, there's probably a budget, and
Yeah.
then it's just a question of identifying the fourth W, the question number three that I talked about. Why
Hmm.
would this client buy from me as opposed to
Yeah.
buying it from my competitors?
Yeah.
But I think those are not the kind of cases that I'm referring to when you're talking, or we are talking about here when you're talking about qualification or disqualification. We're talking about something that is more nebulous, where, as you said, the salesperson has a conversation, feels there is a need, and suddenly the light bulbs start going off, or the dollar signs start appearing in their eyes. And
Mm-hmm.
I think there it's very important to qualify. So I think one of the important uh, messages is definitely go high, right? Sell high. As you go up the corporate hierarchy, you will find a salesperson will find that you get less nonsense and more clarity, uh, as opposed to when you're talking at the lower rung of the organization. Now, that's not nothing good or bad about that. It's just a reality of life. If it's not in the salesperson's abilities to go high because of designation on the business card or access, use your manager or your manager's manager. I've done that in the past, and again, I've had the luxury and the privilege to
Mm.
work with some of the finest managers who are fine human beings, and that's helped me a lot. And that's what I have tried to emulate.
Mm.
This is not me being original. This is me picking a leaf out of many books that I've had the luxury of reading, and I've worked with many of these fabulous managers and leaders in my career. Uh, One of them is that I'm happy to go with a sales call on a sales call with my sales guy early in the sales cycle. There's also a tendency of salespeople to tell their manager, "Boss, let me cook this deal. I'll take you in for the closure."
Mm.
That's wrong, right?
Yeah.
Use your sales manager's experience, use his or her acumen to take him or her into an account, into an engagement early, and then see if does that help your qualification.
I love that point, Geet. So, you
And
also
you've seen me
spoke.
do
Yeah.
that,
Yes,
Sid, I
yes,
think.
I have. In fact, just to understand, Geet, you spoke about the fact that depending on the kind of opportunity, the qualification method would slightly change.
That's right.
Like, for example, if it's an RFP, I'll focus more on why us, right? Because
That's
the
right.
why do anything, why now is already kind of sewed in there. Now, the question I would ask is, if I'm dealing with an SME client, okay, vis-a-vis a large enterprise client or maybe a mega enterprise, a conglomerate? Would the method change? Would there be more detailing, or would it still be the same kind of 4Ws that one would
The
use?
method would not change. It would still be the 4Ws.
Hmm.
But now so that's a fabulous question you asked. Now is when you start peeling the onion, right?
Yeah,
So let's take question number one as an example, which is why. Right? We've learned this in our different sales training that we've gone, that any buyer always has a visible agenda and an invisible agenda.
true.
And the analogy that I've heard used for that is the iceberg, right? So what we see when we're talking to a client is just the visible agenda, which may be, oh, there is an ongoing project or there is something else. But there's also the underlying agenda, which may be that, hey, if I do this project well, I can get promoted, or I can get an increment, or I can get the visibility in the organization that I'm looking for, and so on and so forth. And those will never be stated objective. I think it's important for an astute salesperson to peel the onion
Mm.
on that question number one
Hmm.
in this fashion.
All right.
And again, the peeling of that onion will also vary depending on the kind of client you're talking about. As I say, it could be a SME client, or it could be a large corporate. The motivations, the behaviors, and hence the decision criteria of people will vary based on their realities. So it's important to, but yeah, the model remains the same. The model doesn't really change. The questions remain the same. It's just that how you kind of peel that onion is what might change.
Excellent. So, Geet, this is again a practical question, right? I mean, as salespeople, a lot of salespeople will say, "Hey, I know this method," But my challenge is that I come across a lot of customers who are dodgy in giving information. You also spoke about starting high. When I go to a senior executive, uh, very often he may not entertain me. If he does, he may be dodgy in giving me that information because he is not yet trusting me in that sense, right? So one of the tips you gave is engage your manager, because that is useful, because the manager, a little senior person coming into the discussion, maybe that executive will open up a little bit more. But if a customer is being dodgy about sharing information, answering these questions that I'm asking, the 4Ws, but the opportunity seems real, right? I mean, on the face of it, opportunity seems real. There seems to be a genuine evaluation going on, but the information is not coming from the customer. That helps me know that, should I engage or not? How would one handle that?
So I think a wise man said there are only two certainties in life: death and taxes. Right? Everything else is uncertain. So I think
Yes.
this is just representative of that. There are uncertainties, and this is when you have to introduce a judgment call. You can take that judgment call yourself. You can take a judgment call in discussion with your peers, with your manager, with other stakeholders in the engagement, and decide whether you want to pursue that. It seems to be a real opportunity, but I'm not really getting answers to all the questions that I need to qualify this, right?
Hmm.
And I guess at some point of time, say it just becomes a gut call, which we in the corporate world like to call as a business call.
So I'll just dig a little deeper on this one, Geet,
Sure.
because it's a practical issue that most sales guys face, where customers, they're choosy to whom they give the information, or they give you some information and some questions they kind of clam up, right? So as a sales guy, I need to take a call that boss, ye kuch bata nahi raha. He's not telling me anything. So should I continue to chase? Should I go to somebody else in the account? Should I you bring in some other person who maybe he'll open up to a little bit more? What has worked for you in the past? When I'm sure you've faced a lot of such situations with your teams and yourself also in the market. So what has worked for you to deal with this kind of situation? Well, I
You
do need to
definitely
qualify.
Well, you definitely need to have multiple sources of information within the account. And again, we must remember that we're talking about B2B sales, and we're
Yes.
talking about reasonably sizable transaction values. We're not talking about very low price commodity items. We're talking
Yeah.
about. So I think it's important to have multiple sources of account. You have to ask the same question to different people, get the answers, then do your own analysis, match up the answers. You might have your colleagues, your peers, your pre-sales guys. I always have placed tremendous value on pre-sales people. They're a very, very talented bunch of people, use them in the engagement, in a demo discussion or in a technical discussion, and let them then provide, after the discussion, provide their perspective on how qualified this is. So there are direct ways to get answers to some of these questions, and there are indirect ways to get answers to some of these questions. But definitely have multiple sources. Go as high as you possibly can. Sometimes you're right, people at the lower level become gatekeeper. They don't allow you access to the senior guys, and you need to figure out how to do that. Uh, and I think I think you're doing the right thing by digging deeper on this particular element, because I think this is when sales transition from being a science into an art, right?
True.
And art, and a science is objective. 1 + 1 is 2. We all know that. But art is far more subjective. 1 + 1 can be 3. It can be 0. It can be something different from 2. And I think that's where I have always said that salespeople are born, not made.
Mm.
Because if they were, you could make salespeople, then it just is a matter of training them, educating them, and all of that. But I believe that, and that may be true for a lot of other functions. But I'm a sales professional, so I would definitely attribute that to say that I think the best sales people are people who are born that way and not made that way. I'm not talking about the fast-talking, glib guys. I'm talking about the guys who truly believe that they are in this function to deliver value to their clients.
Excellent.
Right? But also deliver value to their own organization. And I think they have to find that balance. If, for example, if a salesperson feels that he's not getting all the right answers from a client, or she feels that she is getting blocked out at certain point of time in the sales cycle, I think that particular salesperson has to take a judgment call. And I think there's no better way to assess whether you're in the race or not than by actually walking away from it. If you walk away from something and you get called back, you probably are in the race, or there could be other reasons too. But I have tried that in my career. I have walked away from deals, and sometimes I've kept on walking, so I've been out of that deal. And there are other times that I've been called back and won the deal. So I think the true test lies in your ability, in your courage to be able to walk away from a deal where you're not getting all the right signals. But I think that's where sales becomes an art, moves from being a science to being an art.
It's a beautiful point, Geet, because the ability to walk away from a deal, when you walk away from the deal and the client doesn't stop you, it means you are not there.
You were not there. The deal wasn't yours to begin with. Exactly.
And if the client stops you, it means that yes, you have some possibility of being in this deal. And then you need to say that, hey, if you want me to continue, please answer these questions for me, right? So then it becomes a good way of, that's a great point, Keith.
And I think the challenge for salespeople, even if they're in their heart of their heart, and I mentioned honesty in one of my posts earlier, is very, very important. If a salesperson feels that he or she needs to walk away from that deal, but sometimes it's her or his manager who insists on continuing the engagement. And I think that's a really, really challenging moment for that salesperson, that, I don't think this deal is ours, but just to keep my manager happy, I need to stay engaged. That's a tough one.
It's normally the reverse, but yeah, these situations also do arise. So let's ask a question from the point of view of the sales managers, right? The harried lot of guys who are running a team of 7-8 people are supposed to deliver a number for the company, and they are doing their weekly tick mark review calls, right? They do a review call with their team every week on a Monday morning or a Friday evening or what have you. Now, in a review call, typically I don't spend maybe more than 10-15 minutes with a sales guy, max, right? I mean, typically you'll have a common call where everyone's there, and there may be a one-on-one with each sales guy for maybe 5-10 minutes if you're an individual sales manager, right? In those 5-10 minutes that I'm spending with that sales guy, he's working on 5 to 6 deals in a particular quarter. How do I quickly gauge, that I can't ask, why do anything, why now, why us, and who are we talking to for each of those deals? That'll take up a lot of time. So as a tenured sales leader, what would you advise sales managers? How do they quickly take a call, quickly gauge that, hey, this guy says he's going to do X amount of money, X amount of forecast, and he will do it. and this guy won't. This guy will under deliver. This guy will over deliver. Right? Leaders often have that sense. Over a period of time, it develops. So, what's the magic behind that? What kind of questions do they need to ask to quickly gauge that? Yes.
Well, first of all, there is really no magic there. You mentioned it yourself. Over a period of time, each leader or at least a manager will develop an assessment of each of the persons in his or her team,
Yes.
as in terms of this person is likely to sandbag,
Hmm.
basically undercommit and over deliver, or this person is overly optimistic and tends to over forecast but will actually go low, or this person tends to be bang on. So they will develop that over a period of time. Uh, but I actually disagree with your other statement that asking these 3 or 4 Ws is very time consuming.
Hmm.
Uh, Actually, it's not time consuming in my personal experience, and I think
Okay.
if the it can be done very fast, and it's not just the whether the answers to those questions are available and are not convincing. Sometimes those questions have not been asked by the salesperson to their clients or to themselves,
True.
right? So that therein, I think there's a double element there. That on the one hand, you're obviously trying to qualify the pipeline for each of the salespersons in the team,
Hmm. Hmm.
but you're also counseling and coaching the salesperson. Hey, you need to be asking these questions on an ongoing basis when you're engaged with your account in that particular opportunity. In my experience, uh, it's actually pretty fast. And then, of course, the experiential element comes in, right? I may have had some prior experience with that account myself in my, in my life, in my career,
Hmm.
or I may be able to reach out to somebody else and figure out, hey, is this a serious opportunity or not, and so on and so forth. So I think it's a accumulation of multiple things, but in that short call that happens, as you said, on a weekly basis, the forecast call, is actually, in my experience, not very difficult. There's
Okay.
also the element that, is the opportunity progressing over a period of time?
Hmm.
And if I'm getting the same answer, which has now become a stock answer for a period of 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks, is there a real reason that the opportunity has stalled, or is it that my engagement with the client has stalled and the client the project is really moving forward? Again, all of these things, when the question is asked and the answer is either provided or not provided, gives us a clue. So the important thing is not just to look for answers. The important thing is also to look for where there are no answers, because both of these give us signals,
Yes.
and then we have to interpret those signals and synthesize our own version of what we should be doing.
Excellent. Thank you. That's a very practical answer. So, Geet, as a sales leader, again, another question from a sales leader perspective or a sales manager perspective. Uh, how can a sales manager make their team responsible for their forecast? Right? A forecast is basically as a sales individual, I'm giving a particular number which I believe I will deliver this quarter, and behind that I've got like 5 deals, 3 deals, whatever, right? Now, how can a sales manager make his team actually responsible for their forecasts, which are obviously based on solid qualification of the deals in their pipeline? So what's your advice there?
No easy answers there, Sid. I think, again, every human being is different and we have to respect those differences. Uh, there will always be people in the sales team that are different in their behaviors, in the way they forecast, in their optimism, in their pessimism. There are always different kinds of people. So I think uh, I've heard of two types of managers. One type of manager says that, hey, this is the way I work and I want everybody to function in this fashion. It's
Yeah.
called my way or the highway kind of managers. I don't agree with that. I vehemently disagree with that kind of an approach. I believe that the manager, if the manager is a true leader, does adapt to the styles and behaviors up to a point of each of the
Hmm.
people in his or her team.
Okay.
And then some people just need more hand holding or guidance or mentoring. And some people are people who are like, fill it, shut it, forget it kind of people that, they just go out and they're self-driven, self-motivated, they're smart, they're mature, and they'll do their stuff. I think it's important for the leader to adapt his or her style to the nature of different people in the team, and then work up to an extent differently with each of those people in the team.
Okay, so just to double click on that a little bit, if I'm looking at giving the flexibility to my team, right, about forecasting and how they forecast and what I'm kind of sending a mixed signal, okay? Because when I say forecasting as a sales manager, my management is going to expect me to forecast a number.
That's right.
And my number depends on what forecast my team is giving, right?
That's right.
So if I'm kind of blow hot, blow cold on that, depending on what kind of a team I have, a mixed team, it's going to send out a very mixed signal to the team. So how would you clarify
No,
that?
it's not, because the way I work with my team and have this more nuanced approach as opposed to a my way or the highway approach is very different from how I behave with my management, because you're right, management expects a number and that's what I give them.
Yes.
Right. And that's where the responsibility of the leader becomes that insulation layer between the team and the management, and so yes, provide clarity to the management on this is the number that we are going to hit as a team, but at the same time work in a very democratic, in a nuanced, in a differentiated way with the team. And I think that's the responsibility of the leader. That's why we are in that position. I mean, if you can't expect a sales leader to go to the management and say, I think I'm going to hit this number, right? Because you're right, the management would accept that as an answer, and the management is answerable to the board, and the board is answerable to the stock market. So all of them obviously have their own realities and their own expectations. But I think at this level that we are speaking about, I think it's important for that sales leader. And I'm differentiating here between a sales manager and a sales leader. I think managers, the management part of sales leadership is a subset. Sales leadership is far wider in terms of behaviors and mindsets. And I think that's where the sales leader becomes a sales leader in his or her ability to work in that collaborative way with the team, at the same time provide clarity to his or her management.
Great.
Again, a nuanced answer, but again, that's life.
No, I think I love it. Geet, I think each of the answers that you've given have been, really based on a very practical understanding of what happens in the market, what works, what doesn't. So it's been a lovely conversation. A big thanks to you for taking out time from your busy schedule.
I have one more point to add to this.
Please.
This has been an excellent conversation, Sid. So thanks for reaching out and setting this up. But there's one important piece, at least in India, which has helped me a lot in qualification, and that was the premise of this discussion, right? How to better qualify.
Yes.
If you have an established product or service, and you've got a good track record, there are satisfied clients out there, and now you're chasing this new opportunity, I think one of the easiest red signals that I would give to sales guys is if that particular prospect asks for a proof of concept or a POC.
Okay, that's interesting.
If you're asked for a POC, be careful. There might not be a deal there.
Great point. For an established product, I like that point, because often it becomes almost like a part of the sales cycle. Every deal goes through a qualification, a presentation, a demonstration, a POC, a reference check, and then the deal closes. So salespeople also tend to get kind of straitjacketed into that approach, and they fail to see that I have an established product. I've got hundreds of reference customers. Why is this guy asking me for a proof of concept? That itself could be a...
So if a sales guy comes to me and say, boss, great news, this client has asked for a POC, I'm like, dude, you don't have a deal here, right? And there are many reasons for that, and I think a double click on that will be another session. But definitely one tip I would give to B2B salespeople: if you have an established product and a good track record with clients, a POC is a very, very dangerous thing. It's a red signal.
Wonderful. Thank you, Geet. Thanks for sharing all these insights. It's
My
been
pleasure.
An absolute pleasure.
My pleasure.
And I'm sure people who hear this will, be immensely benefited. Both the sales guys on the field as well as the sales managers.
Who should also be on the field, by the way. Sales manager should not be sitting in the office.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for your time, Geet.
My pleasure, sir.
Look forward to talking to you again on some other topics as well. Thank you.
Yeah, let's double click some others also. Thanks a lot.
Done. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.